Welcome back to Wizard Supercoach. A fourth day of making videos, if you can believe it. I certainly can't, but we'll keep rolling on. Now, you might remember from the last video that I said I was now aiming to do one video per day until the season gets here. So that's just over 40 days. I think it's about 44. So that's a lot of videos. Yeah, I got a lot of ideas though, and I think one thing that'll help is towards the end of that, I'll plan it out, but I'll do a review for each team. And so that will be after these kind of videos, I think, so that I've got more to base the analysis on. But yeah, feeling a bit more confident now after making that bold claim that I'll actually get it done. It's just going to be a matter of free time. Before I get to today's video, I just want to say thanks to those people that hit subscribe and got me up to the 150 subs. Yeah, it's really nice, and still really enjoying all the comments that I'm getting. It's a lot more than I expected, and yeah, it's really interesting to hear what people take out of this and what they're thinking. It helps give me ideas for other videos as well. So keep them rolling in, keep the likes rolling in, and yeah, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. So today's video is a little more complicated, I think, than yesterday's. I'm not even 100% sure if the formula behind it is like completely correct. I think it is. Like I'm confident it is, but I'm not I'm not 100% sure. It may be a tiny bit off. But when I tested it, I knew that it was somewhat accurate because I was expecting Geelong to be at the bottom and Gold Coast or Fremantle to be towards the top there. So I think it's a pretty good indicator anyway, and that's all we want. Like it doesn't matter if the numbers are slightly off or whatever. But what I'm looking for here, or what I'm trying to show here, is how teams distribute their CBAs. So you got in the first column here, these are the starting midfielders, your starting three, how much they use them, and then how much the backup midfielders, so the 4 to 6, how much they get a go, and then the rest, if any, some teams don't even use them, if they get a go. So this is only counting mids that got fairly consistent CBAs, and it doesn't count anyone that played like 4 games or anything like that. So as I said, there's not an exact rule to it, or not really like an exact science, but I'll try and explain how I worked out these percentages. So people feel free to correct me in the comments, because I'm by no means a mathematician. What I basically did was I got the CBA percentages for mids 1, 2, and 3, like their personal percentages, and then added them together. That gave me a total for mids 1 to 3. I then did the same for 4 and 6, and then for the rest, if there were any, and that could be like unlimited amount of players, like Geelong and Richmond have a lot outside of the top 6, and then that gave me a number as well. Then from those 3 totals, I added the total together, and then I worked out each individual total, what percentage it was of that grand total, if that makes sense. So anyway, this is what I ended up with, and yeah, as I said, I think it's pretty accurate because Geelong's at the bottom, Gold Coast, Fremantle towards the top. I guess I'll go through each team and talk a bit about the splits and what that might mean in terms of Supercoach. You're probably wondering already, what the hell has this got to do with Supercoach? Well, a bit, I think, because this can give us a bit of an indicator of how teams distribute their CBAs and where there's going to be possible opportunity for players that aren't currently getting as many, or where players may drop off. We don't know. So I'll go through them, and yeah, definitely keen to get your thoughts at the end of it. So we'll start with the top, which is Brisbane, obviously. So they've got the first 3 midfielders they use the most out of any team. So that's 72% of the pie they take. Now, this is Supercoach relevant because Ashcroft was not in the top 3 mids in 2024 for Brisbane. He fell into this 24% category here. Even when he came back into the team in the second half of the season, and even into the finals, McCluggage still was the third man and got more CBAs than Ashcroft. So that's a little bit of a worry. I mean, it got them a grand final. Oh, sorry, it got them a flag. And I know that Ashcroft obviously was the Norm Smith winner. But even in that game, I don't think he got more CBAs than McCluggage. So Neil, Dunkley, McCluggage, they were the three at the top. So what we really need to see is Ashcroft become in that top three. Otherwise, I can't see his Supercoach output improving dramatically like we need it to if we're picking him at that price. If he's just stuck, and I'm not. Obviously, this doesn't mean that this is what these teams are going to do next year, but we know that it's not a bad indicator of, teams don't change too dramatically. So if Ashcroft is stuck in this 24% here, it's going to limit him big time. And as we can see, Brisbane don't really use the rest at all. Like it's those six, the other two being Berry and Rayner. So yeah, that's about the only relevant thing there, I think. I expect Dunkley and Neil will probably stay the same. But yeah, the interesting one is the McCluggage and Ashcroft relationship. So now Fremantle. Now they are an interesting one because they essentially only use 5 players through the CBAs. So your 71% there is Sarong, Brayshaw and Hayden Young. And then the 2 backups are Fife and Johnson. The 6th man's actually O'Meara, but he only got 4% CBAs on average. So he's not even really contributing at all. So that really leaves the door open, you'd think, for Erasmus. Because Fife, at this stage of his career, should be getting less. And if they start to share it around a bit, hopefully, yeah, Erasmus is the man. Johnson as well, he's probably not totally Supercoach relevant or at all, but he's another one that he's got a pretty good points per minute. But he doesn't really get a hell of a lot of game time and CBAs, but when he does well. So hopefully for those two, and especially for Erasmus, because he's a pretty popular pick right now, being DPP and sitting in the forward line, we can see it happen. But it is very interesting overall to see how these teams, like you see Fremantle here, they've got basically 5 players, as opposed to Geelong or Richmond down here that just have it's open season. Like anyone basically that wants to go in there can be in there. Gold Coast I'm not going to bother with too much because they're pretty set. Like you don't get any prizes for guessing that the 3 starters are Anderson, Rao, Miller, and that's 71%. And then after that, it's not really relevant. Like there's Flanders, but he's going to score no matter what. It seems to be wherever he plays, he's fine. The one that did stand out to me a little bit though was Alex Davies. So when he does play, he does get good CBAs and his points per minute is good. He's just not getting great game time. Like I think he only played 6 games last year. So he's obviously, they're a bit like Fremantle. They obviously only use the 4 or 5 players, and then Davies is the one that comes in when they need him. So he's not getting regular games, unfortunately. I can't even remember who the 3% here was for Gold Coast, but yeah, they rely big time on the first 3. The Bulldogs, again, they're not totally relevant. I guess for anyone thinking Matt Kennedy, where does he fit in terms of this? I think he's just purely insurance for Libba, to be honest. He might play with all the others, but yeah, I don't think terribly Supercoach relevant for this one. Collingwood, not really at all. Yeah, they do what they do. They've got Pendlebury to go in. Who's the other one? Oh, Dacos starting in the middle. Obviously Dacos. So yeah, they're not going to take anything off Dacos unless he's injured, unless that plantar fasciitis thing gets out of control. So there again, these splits aren't relevant for them. So Carlton, they've lost Kennedy, and he was their 5th man. So he was getting 33% CBAs. And they've also lost their 6th man, which was Jack Carroll, who was getting 22%. So that now opens the door. It's just a matter for who's going to pick up those CBAs. Now you're probably thinking here, how can Kennedy be 5th sitting in this bracket having 33% CBAs, but the mids in total are only getting 30. It's because of how I worked it out. Like I said before, that's those mids in total are getting 30% of that grand total score. Like, maybe I should have put another column over here that showed that score. Like, it's not a percentage, it's just a score. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, Carlton, they're an interesting one. So Chera, you would think, would probably just absorb those higher CBAs. Yeah, definitely a watch and see though, because there's opportunity there. Hawthorn, yeah, not too much. These middle ones here, you know, they're not doing anything too crazy in terms of their splits. Like, it's about as you'd expect. But Hawthorn, the only thing I can say is Will Day. I can see him getting more, and because he was the fourth man this year. Connor Nash was the third man, which is kind of a shock. So Nash, you could see getting less, and Day getting more, I think. But that's about it. So Melbourne, this is a good one. They're obviously like middle of the pack here. They rely on that first three, like Petrarca, Oliver, and Viney. We know that. I'm surprised it's not higher, to be honest. But where they get interesting is over here. So Neil Bullen was the seventh man with 20% CBAs. So Rivers was 6 over here. Is Rivers going to get the bump in? Like, is he going to absorb some of Neil Bullen's that he's left behind? Like, because I think it's like the third video where I've mentioned Rivers now. I'm not really considering him, but he keeps coming up because there's a lot of opportunity for him. Yeah, there's good indicators there for a breakout. It's just his price is already fairly high. So Sydney, they're kind of similar. Parker's gone, so he was their fifth man with 33%. Adams was 6 with 29, but he's still there. But is he best 22? I don't think so. So that's a lot of CBAs up for grabs right there. Who's it going to be? Hopefully Sheldrick. And again, this is more to show, like, I could have just grabbed a list of individual CBAs here and gone through it that way, but I think this is a better way of showing it, because once we get down to a Geelong or a Richmond, you'll see what I mean. With North, I think the only question there is what's going to happen with Simpkin, and how does Parker coming in affect him? Tom Powell might lose some CBAs. He's getting a lot, considering I don't think he's playing that well, but it looked like they were trying to move away from Simpkin. But then it's kind of pointless, I guess, putting in Parker, who's like 32, over Simpkin when they're trying to look to the future. But they got a pretty good split here. They don't use anyone outside of the first 6, statistically speaking. So we got LDU. Sheasel's the fourth man, actually, which is quite a shock. I thought he'd be in the first 3, but it's LDU, Wardlaw, and then who was the other one? I think it might have been Power or Phillips. I'm just going to quickly check that. It was Will Phillips, so I expect that to change around a fair bit. Probably, if I did this again at the end of 2025, I expect that this now will have a different percentage, and like, there will actually be some in there, because North have got more people now, more mouths to feed. So again, this is a good indicator. It shows you how many like mouths to feed, things like that, because a lot of these teams, as we can see, unless you're a Geelong or Richmond, you're pretty much only using the 6 players. So Port are another one that only use like 5. So this is another interesting one though, because these are quite close together here, these 2 percentages. So they're not using anyone outside the 6. It's pretty much 5 players. So Butters, Rosie, Wines, and then Horne-Francis, Willem Drew. And then it drops dramatically. The 6th man is Jackson Mead with 18%. So I don't know, if people are expecting Horne-Francis to suddenly get this massive spike in CBAs, I don't think it's coming. Just by looking at the way they distribute it through here, unless he was to take the spot of Ollie Wines, because I doubt it's going to be the other two. But then him and Wines are completely different kinds of players. So I think Wines and Drew are the two more similar players. I've said before, actually, I admire Port's balance in the midfield. It's hard for me to say as a Crom man, but it is what it is. I'll say again, I'll take the opportunity to say that Port's defence and forward line is not as good as their midfield, to put it kindly. Moving on from them, the Crom. So it's a pretty decent spread. Something interesting though happened last year. If you try, I was trying to work out where's Peatling going to fit in, what's actually going to happen. So when Crouch got injured towards the end of last year, Sam Berry, who was already in the team, his CBA spiked because he's fairly similar to Crouch, I guess. It's kind of like Crouch from Wish. But then Crouch returned. He was meant to be out for the year, and then he come back, I think 4 weeks later or something like that. I don't know how that happens, but it did. And it was Laird that made way for Berry, so Berry could keep his CBAs. So Laird was 50%, but in the last month, he went down to 0 and played exclusively half-back by the look of it. So continuing on from that, because Laird is now, he's training with the half-backs, it looks like I think his CBA is going to be taken by Peatling, so Peatling will get at least the 50, because Peatling and Crouch are quite similar. So I think it's now going to look like Crouch, Dawson, Saligo as the starters, same as this year, with Peatling, Rankin and Berry as that second string. And as you can see here, they don't really use anyone outside of that. I think the only one that was statistically relevant was Zach Taylor. Now he's one to keep an eye on, I think. I can't tell you off the top of my head what he's priced at, but I think he only played a couple of full games because they kept making him sub, so he might still be cheap. So West Coast, probably the first team here where you start to see, we're getting towards the bottom now. Obviously, the first 3 is dropping off, and we're seeing now that outside of the first 6, it's becoming a lot more opportunity. So the only one that's missing from here now, Zane True, is gone. He was their 6th man with 33% CBAs. So, to be honest, I don't even know who that opens opportunity for. Clay Hall, maybe. He's somewhat popular. He's currently in my team, but he's just a placeholder. I guess we can only hope, but there's no point really trying to work it out with rookies. We don't have anything to go on, and until the practice games at least, we're going blind. I think as well, it's pretty obvious here that the weaker midfields are the ones that share it around more, with the exception of Port. So Essendon, again, Stringer's gone. He was the 7th man. But with the way they do it, it doesn't really matter. I think the 6 is pretty obvious. The only interesting one there kind of is Parrish, I think. How's he going to fit back in, if he fits back in? Are they going to move away from that type and go to, give Durham and Caldwell even more? Or Sardis? I don't know. But as we can see here, they do like to share it around a bit, so that's good. If you're looking, though, as we get to these lower teams, if you're looking for a midfielder that's going to be getting, exclusive CBAs, like a Neal or a Dunkley or one of, a player from up here, it looks like it's not going to happen, which is a point to make when we get to Geelong. But I'm surprised to see GWS down here. I thought they were, they've always been pretty strong, but I didn't realise they've lost quite a few players and stuff. Bit of depth, they really share it around. Peatling's the only one that's really gone though, so he was 5th with 42%, falls in this bracket. I don't know how they're going to replace him. I got to check out as well which players are suspended at the start of the year, because I forgot about that. That opens a few doors. They're definitely going to be one to watch, GWS. But yeah, surprising that they do share it around this much. The Saints, this is a good one. So if you're looking at, say, Philippou, there's plenty here to take up. So Seb Ross is gone. He was the 5th man with 42% CBA. So someone's got to take them. McRae probably takes all them. Philippou is going to slot in though. It's just we can't be relying, I think, on him or McRae to get these really high CBAs because, as we can see here, and this is the point of the video, it's not really St Kilda's style to have, apart from Jack Steele, they don't really have like really high exclusive CBA getters. They definitely share it around here. It sounds like Windhager might be out of favour, so maybe Ross is finally moving away from that defensive tagging style. But that's only, it's only match sim in January, so I don't know what the AFL is like, but I know from playing local football that the teams will get swapped around a lot, and you'll try and get two good players on each other, try and force matchups, things like that. So who's playing in the A and B team right now in match sim is not exactly like concrete, I would say. Then again, I could be completely wrong. So down to Richmond and Geelong, these two really stand out as sharing it around heaps. As I've said before, Geelong are if you own Geelong players in Supercoach, or you have before, they are the most frustrating to watch because Chris Scott, he just does it so much differently. If you have a look, most Geelong players have quite low time on ground, especially the midfielders in comparison to the rest of the comp. So they're not really getting that opportunity. Like they've got high points per minute. I went through it yesterday. There was Bose, Bruin, and who's the other one? Atkins. All good scorers, but they just don't get the time on ground, and they share the CBAs around. So, you're going to get decent scores from everyone, but nothing good enough to be relevant. I'll go with Richmond first because I feel like I skipped them there. There is massive opportunity here in this Richmond midfield, despite the fact that they share it around a lot. Looking at this, oh, by the way, I should have mentioned before that these ones highlighted in green, they're the top three for each bracket, so we can see which teams use which bracket the most. Anyway, getting back to Richmond, Bolton was the fifth man with 54%. He's gone. Jack Graham was 7th with 37%. He's gone. Liam Baker was 8th with 35%. He's gone. Dusty was 9th with 22%, and he's gone. So if this gives you some kind of indication, Dusty was the 9th man and still getting 22% CBAs. That's how much they share it around. And if it gives you any indication of how bad Geelong are with it, like they share it around even more. So when you look at it though, that's the 5th, 7th, 8th and 9th guy gone. Who's going to take those CBAs? So now we're starting to look at guys like, are they going to play, is it Layla in there, the top draft pick they had? Is it Smiley, or however you say his name? Is it going to be him? I don't know. Is it going to come from within the team? They're a big one to keep an eye on right now with the match sim reports. Now, I know I said just before that they're, you can't take too much out of them. They're not concrete. But to see which of these young guys, who's going to be taking these CBA spots, because someone has to. That's the good thing about these bottom teams is, they might not have a lot of great players, but all that means is somebody has to be taking those spots. And if they're on the field, hopefully they're going to score well because they've got more opportunity than rookie would normally get, you would think. You may disagree, let me know in the comments, but that's how I see it. So finally, we get to Geelong at the bottom. As I've said, they share it around the most. That's what I was expecting, and it's what this showed. Parfitt is gone. He was the third man with 55%. So I almost left him out because he wasn't playing a ton of games, but I don't think at the end of the day it would have mattered too much to what came up in this graph. So I included him because 55 is quite a bit when he was playing. So yeah, they share it around, and the main reason this is relevant, I think, because Geelong, as I said, they're not a largely Supercoach relevant team, and usually they haven't been outside of Tom Stewart and now obviously Holmes, but a lot of people wanting to pick Bailey Smith. Now, I've spoken about anti-potting him because I see him as probably the shakiest out of those 6 that everyone seemed to have, or the majority seem to have. And I've noticed more and more people now are catching on and starting to say maybe it is a good idea to anti-pod one of those 6, or Smith maybe is the one. Not saying they copied me at all, but I think everyone's just starting to catch on at the same time. Now, if you're expecting Smith to get high CBAs, I think this is proof that it's probably not going to happen. Geelong they don't use at all really this exclusive lot like the top do. So Dangerfield's the highest CBA getter, and he's only in the 60s. So if you're expecting Smith to go big there, I doubt it. I don't think he's going to get that much. And again, I've said it before in previous videos, but he's coming back off an ACL. And I said just before as well that Chris Scott, the way he uses the bench, there's not many players at Geelong that are getting high time on ground. Or, you know, it's well below average for that position, I would say, most of the team, just the way they share it around. So Smith's probably going to be looking at low time on ground, comparatively, and probably not the high CBAs that people think he's going to get, just because of the sharing, again. I don't know. Do you think that makes him the one to anti-pod? Because he's the one that's standing out for me. If you know, the cherry on top right now is the fact there's these reports coming out of Geelong that he's not getting along with the other players. They're not happy with his standards or his behaviour or whatever it is. I mean, take it with a grain of salt, because off-season there's a lot of shit that goes around. But I don't know, it's not looking good. And it's kind of annoying, because for those of us who want to anti-pod him, it only works if the majority go with him. And if that starts putting people off, like this news coming out about the disharmony with him and his teammates, then hopefully people aren't going to jump off, because then the anti-pod is kind of ruined. Anyway, yeah, a bit of a different video, I think. As always, I hope you've got something out of it. And I mean, I have myself, as usual, but it's easy for me to say because I did this myself. And as I said, there's not an exact formula behind it. I'm not even sure if it's 100% correct, but you know, the eye test kind of backs it up. And as usual, it's only to be used as a tool to go with the rest of the tools. All these videos, I think, kind of link to give a bigger picture, but you can't just take one set of stats and be like, oh yeah, that's the pick right there. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll keep on the run and put out another one tomorrow. Tell me what you think. I'm really interested to hear what people think of this one, just because it is a bit different. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you in tomorrow's video.